You've heard the prophecy, you've seen the headlines, the wars, the alliances, the claims, the name Israel shouted from pulpits and parliaments alike. But what if everything you thought you knew was built on a misunderstanding? What if the Israel in today's news is not the Israel of the Bible? For thousands of years, the word Israel didn't just mean a place, it meant a people, a covenant, a destiny. But now, in our modern world, has that meaning changed? Is the modern nation-state of Israel truly the continuation of the ancient biblical promise? Or has something been rewritten, politically, spiritually, prophetically? Millions believe they're standing with God's chosen. But what if they're standing on a historical illusion? And if that's true, what does it mean for faith, for prophecy, for the end times? This isn't just a question of history. It's a question that could shake the foundation of global religion itself. So before you click away, ask yourself, what if the real Israel isn't where you think it is? Because the answer might rewrite everything we thought we knew about God's chosen people. Part 1. The Covenant and the Ancient Land. In the beginning, there was no kingdom, no walls, no flag, no capital. There was only a promise, spoken in the silence of the desert, to a man named Abram. He wasn't a warrior, he wasn't royalty. He was a wanderer, a stranger in foreign lands. And yet, God chose him to carry a divine legacy. Leave your country, your people, and your father's household and go to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Genesis 12, 1-3. This was not just a command, it was a covenant, a sacred bond between the Creator and one man's descendants. But this covenant wasn't rooted in politics or power. It was rooted in faith, a call to trust, to follow, to believe, even when the destination was unseen. The land God promised Abram would later be called Canaan, but Canaan was not empty. It was home to tribes, empires, and ancient cultures long before Israel existed. Still, God gave Abraham a vision. To your offspring I give this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates. Genesis 15:18. If you trace those ancient borders on a modern map, what you'll find is shocking. The promised land stretched far beyond today's Israel. It encompassed parts of modern-day Egypt, Gaza, Jordan, Syria, Iraq, even parts of southern Turkey. So ask yourself, why does the land promised by God look nothing like the borders we defend today? The Bible paints a picture of a land shaped by obedience, not nationalism. Abraham didn't build a fortress, he pitched tents. His children didn't claim cities. They lived as shepherds and nomads, dependent on divine protection. Even the name Israel didn't begin as a country. It was a name given to Abraham's grandson Jacob after he wrestled with an angel. Your name shall no longer be Jacob but Israel, for you have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed. Genesis 32:28. Israel meant one who wrestles with God. It was a spiritual identity before it was ever tied to a location on earth. Over time, Abraham's descendants would multiply. They would become tribes. Eventually, they would enter the land and form a kingdom. But for hundreds of years, even after receiving the land, they remained under foreign empires, Egypt, Assyria, Babylon. This was no accident, because the covenant was never about owning land. It was about walking with God, even in exile. The land was holy because of the relationship, not the soil. Yet today, debates over borders and ownership dominate every conversation about Israel. But what if we're asking the wrong questions? What if Israel, true biblical Israel, was never supposed to be a political construct? What if it was, and always has been, a spiritual calling? A covenant not of stone and steel, but of obedience, faith, and legacy. If that's true, then something terrifying and liberating follows. Being in the land doesn't make you Israel. Being in the covenant does. And if the original Israel was defined by faith, then who carries that faith today? Who inherited the promise when the land was taken and the people scattered? In the next chapter, we enter the rise and fall of a kingdom. a kingdom that claimed the promise, but lost it all. Part 2, from kingdom to captivity. They ruled. Then they fell. After centuries of wandering, conquest, and covenant, the children of Abraham finally became a kingdom, first under Saul, then David, the shepherd who slew giants and united the tribes, and then Solomon, his son, the king of wisdom, who built the glorious temple in Jerusalem. For a brief moment, it seemed the promise had been fulfilled. Israel had land, law, a king, and a house for the living God, a light among nations. But beneath the gold and incense, cracks began to form. Solomon's heart turned to foreign gods. The people chased idols. Justice gave way to greed. Prophets warned. Kings ignored. And soon, the kingdom split in two. Israel in the north, Judah in the south. Once united by faith, now divided by politics, pride, and rebellion. Then came the invaders. In 722 BCE, the mighty Assyrian Empire swept through the northern kingdom of Israel. Cities burned, temples desecrated. The 10 northern tribes were carried off, never to return. Some say they vanished into the nations. Others believe they still exist, hidden and scattered. But the Bible is clear. The Lord removed Israel out of his sight. There was none left but the tribe of Judah only. 2 Kings 17:18. Then, in 586 BCE, judgment came for the south. Babylon marched into Judah. Jerusalem fell. Solomon's temple, the very house of God, was torn stone from stone. And the people of Judah were led away in chains. This was no minor occupation. This was the death of a nation. The land was left in ruins. The throne of David was empty. The Ark of the Covenant vanished. What remained was memory and mourning. The Israelites were exiles now, scattered across Babylon, Persia, Egypt, and later, Rome. For 70 years they wept by the rivers of Babylon, praying to return. And though some did eventually return under Persian rule, what followed was not a resurrection, but a struggle to survive. The centuries that came brought more conquerors, Greek rulers, Roman legions, and finally, in 70 CE, Jerusalem was destroyed once again, this time by the Romans under Titus. The Second Temple burned, hundreds of thousands killed, and those who survived were scattered to the winds, beginning the Great Diaspora. For nearly 2,000 years, the people once called Israel had no land, no king, no temple, and no sovereignty. So ask yourself this: if biblical Israel ceased to exist for millennia, who can claim to have restored it? Is it enough to reclaim a name without reclaiming the covenant? Is it possible to rebuild a nation without the ark, without the temple, without the divine presence that once dwelled among them? Because if the soul of Israel is not found in land or buildings, but in faith and obedience, then perhaps what was lost was far more than geography. And if that's true, then the real mystery isn't just where Israel went, but who they became. In the next chapter, we follow the trail into exile and explore the hidden identity of a people lost to history, but never forgotten. Part 3, the long exile and lost identity, scattered across the earth, but never forgotten. After Jerusalem burned and the temple crumbled to ash, the people once called Israel were no longer a nation. They became wanderers, displaced, disinherited, but not destroyed. And while the world moved on, they carried something more enduring than land. They carried memory. From Babylon to Persia, from Greece to Rome, generation after generation passed down the songs of Zion and the words of Moses, like sacred embers hidden in the cold. But exile changed everything. Without a homeland, identity became fragile. Names were changed, languages lost, cultures blended. The people of the covenant were slowly absorbed into the world, and yet they did not vanish. In Europe, they were known as Ashkenazi, in the Middle East, Mizrahi, in North Africa and Spain, Sephardic. But outside the spotlight of Western history, something astonishing was happening. In the highlands of Ethiopia, a people called Beta Israel, the house of Israel, were worshiping the God of Abraham, observing the Sabbath, circumcising their sons, and following laws found not in the Talmud, but in the Old Testament. They claimed descent not from converts, but from ancient Israelites, possibly from the tribe of Dan. Across sub-Saharan Africa, the Lemba of Zimbabwe and South Africa practiced ritual animal sacrifice, avoided pork, and carried oral traditions tracing their ancestry to Israel. Genetic studies would later reveal that some Lemba men carry a specific Y chromosome marker found among Jewish priestly lines. In the mountains of India, the B'nai Menashe believed they were descendants of the lost tribe of Manasseh. They practiced Hebrew customs for centuries, long before ever meeting a modern Jew. In Iraq and Iran, ancient Jewish communities preserved Hebrew manuscripts and traditions under Islamic rule for over 1,000 years, isolated yet faithful. Could it be that the true legacy of biblical Israel wasn't just hiding in Europe or modern Israel, but in the forgotten corners of Africa, the East, and beyond? And more importantly, what if we've been looking in the wrong places? Because Israel, true Israel, was never just a race, a passport, or a plot of land. It was a covenant, a spiritual identity, a soul marked by obedience and suffering, resilience and exile. Though I scatter them among the peoples, yet in distant lands they will remember me. Zechariah 10:9. If the tribes were scattered, hidden among nations and languages and skin tones, then rediscovering them isn't a matter of maps, it's a matter of memory. But here lies the tension. When the modern state of Israel was established in 1948, Jews from Europe and the Middle East were invited back to the land. But others were left behind. Many of African descent were denied entry or recognition. Their claims were dismissed, their history ignored. So now we must ask, what if the true descendants of Israel never returned to Jerusalem because they were never invited? In the next part, we'll explore the creation of modern Israel and uncover what was built, who built it, and what may have been left out of the story. Part 4. The creation of modern Israel, 1948. The desert trembled, the radios crackled, and after nearly 2,000 years, the name Israel returned to the map. Some called it a miracle, a prophecy fulfilled, a nation reborn from the ashes of exile. But history, real history, is rarely so simple. The modern state of Israel was not born in a vacuum. It was born in the shadows of 2 world wars, through a tangle of political negotiations, global guilt, and imperial design. In 1917, long before the Holocaust, Britain issued the Balfour Declaration, a letter stating its support for the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. This wasn't a biblical act. It was geopolitical. At the time, Palestine was under British control, taken from the defeated Ottoman Empire. The declaration was vague, controversial, and made without consulting the Arab population already living there. But it lit a fuse. Then came 1947. The United Nations proposed a plan to divide the land, one part for Jews, another for Arabs, a 2-state solution, a compromise wrapped in tension. In 1948, the British mandate ended. The Jewish Agency, led by David Ben-Gurion, declared the independence of the State of Israel. But who were these founders? Many of them were not rabbis, not priests, not prophets. They were secular Jews, socialists, nationalists, survivors of pogroms and genocide. They were not building a theocracy, they were building a state. A modern, military-capable, Western-style nation. One that would defend itself with tanks, not prayers. This troubled many within the Jewish religious world. Orthodox and ultra-Orthodox leaders around the world denounced the new state, not because they were anti-Israel, but because they believed only God could restore Israel. This is not the Israel promised by God, declared Rabbi Joel Teitelbaum, a leading Hasidic figure. It is a man-made imitation, a political construction born in rebellion, not redemption. For centuries, Jews had prayed for the Messiah to gather the exiles and rebuild the kingdom. But now, human hands had done it, with bullets, ballots, and barbed wire. So we are left with a haunting question. Can a nation be chosen if it chooses itself? Is this the fulfillment of the Abrahamic covenant, or is it a rebranding of ancient faith into modern nationalism? And what of those who were left out? The Beta Israel of Ethiopia were denied immigration rights for decades. The Igbo of Nigeria, who claimed descent from the tribes of Israel, were ignored. Even now, many Black and Eastern Jewish communities face skepticism, rejection, or racial discrimination in the land that calls itself Israel. Was this a return or a reinvention? A resurrection or a replacement? Because if Israel is more than a name, if it's a covenant tied to obedience and spiritual identity, then declaring a nation is not the same as fulfilling a prophecy. In the next part, we turn our eyes to the lost tribes, those scattered across continents, and ask the question no one dares to: who are the real descendants of ancient Israel, and why have they been forgotten? Part 5. The Lost Tribes. Who really are the Israelites? The people of the promise may not be where you think they are. When Assyria conquered the northern kingdom of Israel in 722 BCE, it didn't just defeat an army, it shattered a nation. 10 of the 12 tribes vanished from history, taken into exile, absorbed into foreign lands. They are known today as the 10 lost tribes of Israel, but lost does not mean gone. For centuries, explorers, scholars, and religious leaders have searched for these tribes, believing they still exist somewhere, hidden among the nations. And the deeper you dig, the more unsettling the truth becomes. Let's begin in Nigeria, where the Igbo people, a major ethnic group, have long claimed they are descendants of ancient Israelites. They observe Jewish customs, circumcision on the 8th day, kosher dietary practices, Sabbath rest, and purification rituals that mirror Levitical law. Some even call themselves Bnei Yisrael, children of Israel. Across southern Africa, the Lemba tribe tells a similar story. They claim their ancestors came from Senna in the north, possibly ancient Yemen or Israel. They practice animal sacrifice, avoid eating pork, and follow traditions that align with Old Testament commands. In the 1990s, genetic studies revealed that many Lemba men carry the Cohen modal haplotype, a priestly marker found in Jewish men descended from the biblical Aaron. Then there's Beta Israel in Ethiopia, a community that has kept Jewish traditions alive for over 1,000 years without access to the Talmud or connection to European Judaism. They read only the Old Testament, practiced ancient rituals, and claimed descent from the tribe of Dan. Some were eventually airlifted to modern Israel, but not without resistance. Their identity was questioned, their Jewishness doubted. Why? Because they didn't look like the Israelites people had come to expect. Now, look west. Among African Americans, a growing number believe their ancestors, brought to the Americas in the transatlantic slave trade, were among the lost tribes. They point to parallels in history, prophecy, and oral tradition. They ask, could the horrors of slavery have hidden not only a people, but an identity? And in India, the Bnei Menashe, a group in the northeastern hills, claimed descent from the tribe of Manasseh. They practiced Hebrew customs for centuries, long before ever encountering modern Judaism. So here's the question that shakes everything. If bloodlines were scattered and memory erased, who has the right to call themselves Israel? Is it a matter of documents or of destiny? Is Israel a name you inherit by birth certificate or by covenant? A calling etched in the soul, preserved through suffering, passed on through faith. And if these scattered people, ignored for centuries, still carry the markers of ancient Israel, then why have they been left out of the modern story? Could it be that the true remnant of Israel isn't sitting in government offices or military bases, but in rural villages, isolated tribes, and broken communities, waiting to be recognized? In the next part, we'll uncover how religion and politics merged to shape the world's view of prophecy, and how supporting Israel may mean something very different than what we've been told. Part 6. Religion, Politics, and the Prophetic War. When prophecy becomes policy, the line between heaven and earth begins to blur. For millions of Christians, especially in the United States, modern Israel is more than just a country. It's a sign, a fulfillment, a countdown. Ask them why they support Israel, and many won't mention politics or democracy. They'll point to prophecy. God said he would bring his people back to the land. This is the fulfillment of Ezekiel's dry bones. Jerusalem must be restored before Christ returns. But let's pause. What prophecy are they referring to? And more importantly, whose interpretation? In the 19th century, a wave of Christian movements began promoting a new vision of the end times. It was called dispensationalism, a theology that taught Jesus would not return until the Jewish people were gathered again in Israel. It gained traction, books were written, timelines drawn. By the 20th century, this belief had become mainstream in American evangelicalism. Then came 1948. The modern state of Israel was born, and many believers saw it as undeniable proof. The prophetic clock is ticking. From that moment on, support for Israel was no longer just political, it became spiritual. To question the state was to question God's plan. To oppose it was to stand in the way of destiny. But there's a problem. Biblical prophecy is full of if-then conditions. God's promises to Israel were always tied to obedience, justice, and righteousness, not merely geography. If you obey my voice, then you shall be my treasured possession. But if you turn away, the land will vomit you out. Yet these warnings are rarely mentioned. Instead, what we see is a fusion of theology and nationalism, prophecy and military aid. The U.S. sends billions of dollars to Israel. Politicians stand at the Western Wall quoting scripture. But beneath the surface, something darker is stirring. Because in many end times interpretations, Israel must be at the center of a final war, Armageddon, a cataclysmic battle where nations gather, blood flows, and judgment falls. Some Christian leaders actually believe that the faster conflict erupts in the Middle East, the sooner Jesus will return. This is no longer about peace, this is about triggering prophecy on demand. But here's the danger. When humans try to fulfill prophecy by force, the result is never divine. We've seen this before. The Crusades, the Inquisition, wars launched in the name of sacred words but soaked in blood. So we must ask, is prophecy being used as a roadmap or as a weapon? Are world powers supporting modern Israel out of reverence for God or out of political convenience wrapped in religious language? And if the true Israel, the one God honors, is a people marked by justice and humility, then we should be asking not who controls the land, but who carries the covenant. Because if we mistake political alliance for spiritual obedience, we may find ourselves cheering for a prophecy we never truly understood. In the next part, we look beyond politics to something deeper, older, eternal. We ask, what if Israel was never meant to be a flag or a nation, but a heart set apart? Part 7, the spiritual Israel beyond borders. What if Israel was never meant to be a country on a map, but a covenant written on the heart? After centuries of war, exile, return, and debate, we've chased the name Israel across continents and centuries, but now we must stop chasing and start listening. In the New Testament, the Apostle Paul wrote something daring, something that shattered every boundary and birth certificate. A person is not a Jew who is one only outwardly. No, a person is a Jew who is one inwardly, and circumcision is of the heart by the Spirit, not the letter. Romans 2:28-29. He was pointing to a deeper truth, one we've forgotten in our obsession with borders and bloodlines. The true Israel is not about race, it's about relationship. Moses hinted at it. The prophets cried out for it. Jesus embodied it. The covenant was never a matter of soil, but of soul. A heart that walks humbly. A life that reflects justice and mercy. A people, any people, who live in the spirit of the promise, even if the world doesn't recognize them. That means Israel might not always wear a flag. It might not sit behind national borders. It might be found in forgotten deserts, broken homes, underground churches, prison cells, refugee camps. It might be found in those the world has cast aside. And perhaps, just perhaps, Those who suffer, who wander, who remain faithful in the shadows, are closer to Abraham than those seated in palaces of power. Because God's Israel was always meant to bless all nations, not dominate them. To reflect the light of heaven, not enforce the politics of earth. So maybe it's time to stop asking, where is Israel? And start asking, who is Israel? Maybe it's time to realize that this identity was never meant to be inherited, but awakened. And maybe, just maybe, if you've been walking in obedience, in exile, in longing, you are not lost. You are not forgotten. You may be Israel and not even know it. Because in the end, Israel is not just a people of the past. It is a living heartbeat, a scattered fire waiting to burn again. And those who carry that fire carry the promise. So we ask again, is modern Israel the same as biblical Israel? We've followed the ancient paths. We've traced the bloodlines, the battles, the borders. We've seen kingdoms rise and promises shattered. We've watched names rewritten, identities erased, and prophecy politicized. We've seen the land, but have we seen the people? We fast forward now, maps unfolding, missiles in the sky, prayers whispered at the Western Wall, and far away, in quiet villages of Africa, India, and forgotten corners of the world, young black children read the Psalms, elderly women light candles in silence, and voices echo from exile still singing the songs of Zion. Not all who claim the name carry the covenant, and not all who carry the covenant are recognized by the name. So maybe the answer isn't political. Maybe it's not about embassies or military power or who draws the lines on the map. Maybe the real Israel was never a place you could point to. Maybe it was always a people, a remnant, a calling. And maybe, just maybe, the real Israel is you, because the story never ended. It just got lost. Until now.